Hello everyone, my name is Sharath Vanchishwaran. I'm a customer engineer based in Melbourne, Google Cloud, Australia. Today I have also with me Danny Wong, who's also a customer engineer, who'll be covering the second half of the session. Let's dive into it. So, today we'll be covering how you can manage large compute engine VM fleets with the help of Google Cloud tools such as patch management and configuration management. We'll be also having a look at some of the capabilities through demos and a high level roadmap of what features are coming soon, and also summarizing what we learned today. Now, I understand there are a lot of sessions happening in this week. So, if there is only one thing that I want you to take away from today's session, that would be that Google Cloud now provides automated patch and configuration management tools across Windows and Linux environments. Whenever we talk to our customers who migrated their on prem workloads to cloud, one of the key concerns they have is how to have a single pane of glass view of all their large scale infrastructure, um, and how to analyze the patch levels that different operating systems such as Windows and Linux environments have got. Some of the tools that they might be using won't be compatible with cloud. As a result, we are introducing a suite of VM management tools in the form of patch management and configuration management. And these tools help you in managing your compute engine instances. Let's see how it helps. Having discussed with a lot of customers in the US and around the world, these are some of the top concerns that we realized customers have. Starting with patch compliance across Windows and Linux distributions. There could be several versions of Windows operating systems running within your environment, and same with Linux distributions. How do you ensure compliance within these environments? Second point being reliability of patches before you're applying them. There could be some mission critical workloads that you're running within your large compute fleets, and you need to definitely test them in a staging or development environment before going ahead and applying them in production. Third thing is orchestrated patching. If you have, for example, Windows environment and you need to ensure that the machines are going down for a reboot after patching in a specific sequence, then you need to turn off those services in a specific sequence. For that, it requires some pre-steps as well as post-steps post the patching is completed. So orchestrated patching is something which is really important. Fourth being application aware or cluster aware patching. This means no two applications running within the same cluster should be taken off at the same time. So that some services and application which depends on the high availability based on the cluster availability shouldn't be down at the same time. And fifth and important point being integration with existing patching tools. Google Cloud's vision on patch management is that any customer should be able to patch any operating system anywhere, irrespective of whether your applications are running on a VM fleet running on premises or on any other cloud. So there are two key capabilities with patch management that you'll find out. One is patch compliance reporting, which gives you a view of all the key patches that needs to be deployed in your environment. And second one being automated patch deployment, and you can go ahead and configure that. Let's have a look into the patch compliance details first. So on the right hand side of this slide, you see a screenshot of a dashboard which shows there are close to 1192 VMs which are categorized based on Windows and Linux environment. And it gives you also an overview of some missing critical patches. And the same with Linux distributions as well. So compliance reporting actually provides you patch compliance reporting across Windows and Linux distributions. And it also gives you a detailed metadata around what's the type of patch. Is it critical or is it something that can be done later? And a detailed metadata of all those patches that needs to be deployed across a fleet of VMs. The second capability with patch compliance dashboard is it leverages the native tools. For Windows, it could be Windows updates or Microsoft updates. For Linux, it checks the repo managers and repositories. So it integrates with the native tools that you already are aware of. The third thing being the support for Windows environments. It supports a wide range of operating systems starting from Windows Server 2012 R2 and above. And same with Linux, most popular Linux operating system versions such as Red Hat Enterprise, Linux, CentOS, Ubuntu, and Debian are supported for patch compliance. Now, the second part of patch manager capability is what we call as patch deployment. So once you have identified that from the dashboard there is a certain set of VMs requires uh, to be compliant, you need to go ahead and deploy certain patches with the help of patch deployment job. There are four key questions whenever you want to deploy a particular patch on an environment. The first thing being, what VMs to patch? First thing, let's go ahead and understand how you can have some filter set on targeting your VMs. So there are several options for targeting your VMs. It could be either based on a particular region, like I can go ahead and specify that within this GCP project, all the VMs running in a specific region should get patched, or I could define a specific label such as the environment should be development or staging. Go ahead and deploy this patch. And a single deployment job can have up to 500 VMs as part of it. The second key question for an administrator regarding patching would be what patches to apply for. And this is where you define the patch configuration. As a screenshot indicates, you can possibly go ahead and define whether it is a Windows patch. You can go ahead and say, I can include this particular KB link. And if it's something which you want to exclude for your mission critical applications, you can say that don't deploy these KBs onto this particular application. So it's possible to include or exclude certain patch based on their version and the criticality when you're going ahead and defining a patch job. The third one is about when should I patch, or in short, scheduling. Whether it should be a recurring deployment, whether it should be done during a specific maintenance period, so that customers can go ahead and ensure their end users are not impacted and give them enough time for patching their environments on downtime. Then fourth being what controls can I use? For example, there should be some pre and post actions, as we discussed earlier. In case of Windows machines, it could be that you need to ensure the service is going down in a specific order, or you want to domain join those machines post a patching and reboot in a specific order. So, having that control on when to reboot and what pre and post scripts that needs to be run is something which patch deployment gives you. So, with that, let's dive into this demo on patch deployment capabilities. I'm going to walk you through three things. The first thing is how do you onboard by enabling these APIs and how to navigate to the patch management service. Second thing is how do you get the patch compliance for your environment. And third is how you can do a patch deployment to fix those problematic machines so that you can bring them back to compliance. Let's navigate. I click on Compute Engine, and at the bottom part I can see OS Patch Management. When I click on that, it will take me to this page. As you see here, we have three APIs which are currently disabled, and the Learn More page will actually talk to us about what permissions are required, how the agent is collecting the information when you are enabling these APIs, what's the architecture, what the agent does to collect this information, and what permissions are required, and etc. and all the details. Now, once you have activated or enabled a service, the OS config agent is part of most of the base image packages which you will use for launching a VM within the GCP environment. There are some exceptions like Ubuntu and SUSE environments which we are working to add right now. But for those VMs, you can add it separately, and we have clear instructions on how to install an agent. For the interest of time, I'm going to an environment where I've already configured this, and in this project, I have 18 VMs. As you can see from this report, there are certain Ubuntu VMs, which are three of them. There are 5 CentOS VMs, 3 Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and 5 Windows. If you look at the Ubuntu VMs, it doesn't look like there are much issues. Whereas with the CentOS VMs, I see there are some critical and important security updates that are missing. Same with RHEL and Windows environment. Now, if you want to know more about the criticality or the details of these patches, you can click on Learn More on the dashboard, and it will actually take you to the patch compliance status reports, which gives you in detail about what do we refer to as critical update or an important update, etc. Now, as an administrator, I would like to know more about what these patches are and how can I go ahead and apply some fixes. So if I click on VM instances page, it takes me to this, section where it talks about the VMs and the OS distribution, instances where these patches are getting deployed. If you look at, so for example, the CentOS app, it says it's running in US Central 1A. It's running, OS distribution of CentOS. Let's have a look at more detail. It shows that the status is critical updates are available. There are 3 of them are missing, and there are several other important updates for us to take an action. In the upcoming releases, we are adding a lot of metadata like series code, what repo manager you can connect to, where do I get these patches, and a lot more information. With Windows environments, we will be adding the KB links and the MSRT severity, etc. So you will get a lot more information. Now, that completes the first 2 parts, which is onboarding and how to get the patch compliance in your environment and to understand the state of environment. The third important thing is, as an admin, I want to fix these problematic machines. I want to create a patch deployment job which deploys the patches and brings these VMs back to the compliant state. So let's click on new patch deployment. Now, while going through the slides, I mentioned there are 4 questions which really matter for admins to patch VMs when doing their deployment. First one is, which VMs to patch? In order to choose that, we have several options. We have a lot of flexibility here, like you can patch by a GCP project, a specific zone, region, or labels or tags. In this case, I'm going to use VM instance label. I'm going to add a VM instance label as environment as dev, which indicates that any machine with label environment dev will get patched. Let's click on next. I also have options where I can choose to patch all VMs. And in this case, after answering the first question of what VMs to patch, the second important question is what patches do you want to install? Because every customer will have different SLAs for different patches. I've seen several customers have critical security patches to be done within 30 days, non-critical to be done within 45 days. So I can say all critical updates, all security updates, go ahead and also, if you have any patch exclusion, like if you know a particular patch which will break your environment, we can exclude those patches. You can put the KB article or you can put multiple KB articles, each comma separated, and we will exclude that when you are installing the remaining patches. In Linux, you can say kernel updates or you can include wildcards and all that stuff here. The other option is to have patch inclusion or include certain specific updates. Where you can provide selective updates and ask us to install the selective updates. And you just need to provide the particular KB article, or if it's a Windows update, you can just mention that particular update that you want to include in it. So the same way you can specify patch parameters for YUM, RHEL, CentOS environments as you see here. And third question is moving on to scheduling. You can patch either right now or you can schedule it for later, or you can add it as a recurring schedule with specific frequency on a specific date, time, on a specific day on a month. Most customers we have seen would like to set a maintenance window so they can communicate to the users and ensure the whole update process doesn't go beyond that duration of the maintenance window. And that's what the maintenance window schedule is talking about. And then there is an option to select a time so that, say, if you want to do it on a specific day like a Friday evening, you can go ahead and specify that. It can be not just 60 minutes, you can go ahead and change it to say 120 minutes. So the help section here indicates what current running steps will be included within this maintenance window. So next option is post reboot option, which is the fourth, which is an advanced option where you can go ahead and see what all the patch scripts that you can run or post patch scripts that you can run when you're doing a patch maintenance window. For example, the agent will decide if a reboot is necessary based on the metadata of the packages, and as well as if the agent detects the well-known signals based on each OS, it will determine that a reboot is required or not. You can always select whether the machine should be never rebooted if it's business critical application and you want to do it on your own maintenance window. There are also some options to specify some pre and patch scripts. For example, a lot of admins want to run scripts to make sure everything is working fine after this patching. That's for post scripts. For example, in this case, I'm clicking on Linux script. There is a patch script option, a patch pre-script, which I've selected from as you would imagine, a GCS bucket, and there is detailed documentation on how you can set these scripts and upload it onto a GCS bucket, and you can select this post scripts. In some cases, we have seen there are test scripts that you will need to run. Already deployed a few jobs, and let's go ahead and see one scheduled deployment. In this case, you can see that these are the previous deployments that's already created. Right now you will see only option to delete these deployments, but we are working on adding features like you can edit and add more VMs or remove any machines from patching deployment job that you have already created. Now let's go ahead and see a previously run patch job. So when you go in here right now, you can see that there are several scheduled deployment runs that has happened already, and it every time it runs a scheduled job, it logs a detailed status on the run. Let's take a look at the patch job test patch job which got run, and it says there are 16 instances updated and there are some errors that has occurred. It shows the overall duration I had set was 1 hour, and the percentage complete is 100%, which indicates all VMs have been tried to patch, and the classifications of patches have been also configured here. As you see here, some of the instances state is detected saying that no agent detected, which means there is an installation of agent issue for that. Some of them are inactive, and some of them are success as well. You'll be able to find out a detailed log when you click on the view option, which will take you into the stack driver logging, and that gives you complete report on what had happened when the agent had actually tried to communicate and the patch job was trying to run. That completes the three parts I was talking about. Starting, how do you navigate an onboard patch management, how to get the compliant state of your environment, and finally, how do you apply patches through a patch deployment job so that you can bring those machines back into the compliant state and set an automated recurring deployment. With that, let me switch this back to slides. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all learned something about patch deployment today. Now, let's invite Danny Wong to cover the second half on configuration management capabilities.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. So my name is Danny Wong. So I'm a customer engineer at Google Cloud. I'm going to walk you through the second part of the presentation today, configuration management. So let's dive in. So when you have a large fleet of compute engine VM to manage, oftentimes you will find it quite difficult to deploy and maintain the design software and configuration state at scale. So you probably want your VM stay in compliance with your policy and remediate it immediately if it is out of compliance. You also probably want to set up some guardrails for your team so that when they set up some VM instance, you probably want that initial config to be done properly with the correct agents installed, with the logging sent to the right storage, etc. And then automated to deploy and maintain third-party software will be extremely useful, especially you have got a lot of virtual machines. And you probably want this to integrate with your existing CI/CD and DevOps tools as well. So how are we going to address this? OS configuration management is a Google Cloud native service to define, to deploy, and maintain consistent configuration. So the configuration here means the desired state and software of your VM instance. So you can bootstrap it any package anywhere and integrate it with your current config tools such as Chef and Puppet. And currently it supports VM in the GCP environment, and we are going to extend it to other public clouds and on-premises environment in future release. Compliance dashboard, basically that is the your single pane of glass, so you can look at the compliance status of your Windows and Linux VMs in one single location. So configuration management is quite simple. It's just a two-step process. So step one, just to create your desired configuration in the YAML file. So this is something that we call guest policy here. Then you can apply the guest policy to one or even more than one VMs. So let's look at an example of a guest policy. So with a few lines, I can simply tell the config manager like what I want to install. So in this case, I want to install the stack driver agent using yum, and the desired state is installed. You can also define which package repository to use, so like where to pull your package for the installation. Software recipe gives you a little bit more flexibility in defining a set of instructions to install software. So the instructions could be like downloading a file, decompressing a zip file, or like running custom commands or scripts to configure your software. And after you create all this guest policy, you can assign it to your fleets of virtual machines based on some attributes like the labels of the virtual machines. So let's quickly see a demo to understand how the configuration management works. So in this configuration demo, I will talk about three things. Firstly, how do you onboard the configuration management service? Secondly, how to create a guest policy. And finally, how to apply the policy that we have created. I've also showed you some G-Cloud commands on how to make that happen. So okay, the first thing is onboarding. So if you have onboarded the patch management service that Saraf has shown earlier, it will enable all our OS config APIs. So you are all taken care of and you will have basically everything done. When we launched the config management beta in the first half of the year, it is API only, so we are building the user interface for better user experience. And from here, you can see the APIs is enabled, but in a scenario, if you haven't enabled that before, you can go to APIs and service or simply just type CloudOS config API at the search bar at the top of the screen. And you will see a screen just like this. There will be an enable button, and in this case, I've already enabled the CloudOS config API, therefore it is showing a disable button here. So once you enable it, it is the same API which powers both patch management and config management service. So okay, that's the first part of the demo, enabling the API in Google Cloud Console. Second part of the demo is about creating a guest policy, which is my desired configuration for my fleet of VMs. You can start with any text editor that you prefer and to start drafting your YAML file to define what you want to install, what configuration you want there. You can also start by looking at some examples in the documentation that I've added all the links in the later part of the slide, so you can use that easily. And in our documentation, you can go to the compute engine under create a guest policy. You can see all those examples here, such as how to install Stackdriver logging agent to the VMs at scale. Then you can scroll down to the bottom of the page. It talks about how do you create a guest policy. So it is a simple G-Cloud command that we will use to create a policy. So in my demo, in the interest of time, I've already created some policies. So the first thing I will start with is using the list command to show me all the policy that I have in my environment. So I will make the text a little bit bigger. So the G-Cloud command with the beta keyword here because the config management service is now in beta. With this list command, it will show two policies that I've created. One is the Stackdriver policy and the other one is the Windows policy. And the second thing that I want to know is what exactly in the Stackdriver policy. And I will use the describe command here and then I will hit enter. And in this case, I'm installing a Stackdriver agent. And when I scroll up, it shows where am I pulling the package from. And the labels here means that we will apply the policy to any VMs that got a label called color with the value equal to red. And next time when you create a new VM and put a label color equals to red, this configuration will be automatically applied. So the next thing that I want to do is to check whether the Stackdriver policy is assigned to the correct VMs. So in this case, there's another G-Cloud command that I can show very quickly. And for details of all the G-Cloud command for configuration management, you can take a look at our documentation. So basically this G-Cloud command is G-Cloud compute instance OS inventory list instance package name Stackdriver agent. Right now I've got two machines here which have the Stackdriver agent installed. These two VMs have the label color equals to red. And cool, so that concludes our configuration management demo where we talk about how do you onboard the service, how to create your design configuration guest policy, and how to apply that to the VMs that is designed, and finally to verify that is correctly applied. And let me go back to the slides. Great. So let's take a look at the roadmap that we have. So the OS patch management is now in GA. So we are going to support more environments like on-premises or other clouds in future release. And for config management, now we are in beta. So currently it is an API only service, and we will be adding new user interface in the future release. So you can use both patch management and configuration management service now with no cost until December 31st this year. And after that, there will be a free tier for the first 100 VMs, and any additional VMs, it will cost around like 2000 $2 per month per virtual machine. So for details, please check out documentation. And I've included some useful links here, so please check that out to learn more about the patch management and configuration management service. So both services are part of the Active Assist solution, and Active Assist is a solution that uses data, intelligence, and machine learnings to reduce cloud complexity and administrative toil, making it easy to optimize your cloud security, performance, and cost. To learn more, you can visit the link included here and the breakout section on Active Assist. So that's all we want to share today. So in this section, Saraf and I have introduced a new Google Cloud service, which provide you an automated patch and configuration management tools across Windows and Linux environments to manage your fleet of VMs. So I hope you find it useful, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. Thanks.